Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and Will Hathaway, our guest today, author of What If God Is Like This? And his latest book, The Human Side of Christ. Will has spent about 13 years in youth ministry before transitioning into his current position as a college and career pastor. Before that, he was in law enforcement. And how you doing, Will?
Good. How are you today?
Good. You know, I was enjoying the Skype picture we had of you because you were in your car.
Yeah, I was actually camping. You guys caught me on vacation, so I saw your little bit on having technology with you, so I guess I didn't do a very good job of getting away from it.
Oh, no, so maybe we can reconnect. But that was pretty cute. You're in your car, and that was great. It's the first time I ever Skyped anybody in from their car, and I noticed in the back seat you had a couple of Slurpers. You must have some kids.
I do. I've got 3 of them.
Nice to have you with us today. Your book is fascinating. What inspired you to go down this road?
Well, this one was one of those that was inspired a lot out of conversations I'd had with my non-Christian friends. And one of the things that I kept coming across and talking with people was that they had a hard time acknowledging that a man and Jesus could be God, and the miracles and things like that. And we live in a skeptical society. And at one point, I most of my life, I've always tried to prove, that he was God. And then finally, I just said, well, maybe how about you just forget the fact that he's God for right now, and how about you just study him like any other person, like you'd study any other person in history. Right. He's left quite a legacy, and so maybe that'd be worth looking into. And I found that the more people would look into what he would teach in the context that he taught it, in the time in history that he lived, that he taught it, that I was getting overwhelmingly positive responses with the fact that they had never actually taken the time to look at him just as a person, and in doing that, that's where they found his divinity.
All right, so you clearly are looking at the human side of Christ, which is a fine line between the human and the divine, but he obviously lived both roles.
He did, and one of the things that I think for a lot of Christians, and at least for me, is that I spend most of my life viewing Jesus as God, and I can worship him as God, and I can admire him as God. I can be in awe of him as God. But one of the things that's kind of hard to do is to relate to him as God, because we are not God, obviously. But there was a very human side of him, a part that is very relatable to us, and that I think we can learn a lot from, that I think often gets obscured by the fact that he was God. And I think it's sometimes scary to look at, well, how human might he have been, and how much humanity was there. But I think as people, that's the part, at least for me anyway, that's the part that I've learned a great deal from, because it's taught me more about how to be me.
Yeah. Well, it's the part that we can most identify with as well, and that makes, like you say, his divinity even more clear. Well, let's get into this a little bit, Will. As a human, Christ, the human side of him. In your research and in your study, how did he handle prayers that weren't answered the way he wanted them?
Well, I think that's one that a lot of us can relate to. We've all had those prayers we've prayed, that especially, like healing prayers.
Right.
A friend is sick or a family member, and we pray and pray and pray, and and nothing happens. And I don't know if we've all had it, but I've had friends that died, and it's very frustrating, because you open up your Bible and here's this guy that would walk up and say a word, put his hand on somebody, and they were healed, and then we're told to be like him.
Right.
And so when we do that and it doesn't work, I think it makes us think that, okay, I have a problem. I'm not connected, or there's some issue there. It can be very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I talk about in the book is that I wish there were more stories of how he would have handled unanswered prayers, because that's something that I can relate to a lot better, or at least to a great deal, when it comes to my personal life. And one of the things that was fascinating to me is that as I was going through the book, I realized that there is one unanswered prayer that the Bible contains in regards to Jesus, and that was his prayer in the garden for a different way.
Right.
In the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, "Let this cup pass," and that prayer was not answered. And what's fascinating about it is that Jesus continued to pray all night, and at the end of that prayer, we see him, a guy who was just an hour ago, sweating drops of blood and terrified and not knowing what to do and pleading with God to save his life. At least it says he rose up and went out to meet his accusers. And one of the things that I discovered in that is that one of the things that Christ taught me is that when we pray, we're typically asking God to change our environment or change our situation,
right,
to make it more bearable for us. And in the instances where he doesn't, in that case, he's changing us. Jesus went from being scared and nervous to being strong and powerful. He became more powerful through that unanswered prayer as he went out to face this challenge. And I think that it's important that prayer works two ways. One, it can change our environment, but in the other way, it changes us, and it can change us and prepare us to face our environment.
How did you deal with that? I don't know really how to define it, but that moment when Jesus began to realize that he wasn't a human being, that he was divine, and that we see that at Mount Transfiguration, where he went from the human to the divine and back again. But how did you deal with this, the understanding of him, understanding who he really was?
That was an interesting one because, from a lot of my life, I was under this idea that Jesus just always knew who he was. He was born, just always knew who he was. And one of the things that I think is interesting is people, we're born and we have to learn who we are.
Right.
We have to learn who our parents, our history, and our genealogy. We have to learn who our culture. And so if Jesus didn't have to do that, then he would have missed out on a huge part of being human. And so I based much of the book around in Philippians, where it says that he made himself nothing and became a man. He lowered himself, and that translation is that he emptied himself, and so he essentially set aside aspects of his divinity or aspects of access to his power. And one of the questions asked in the book is, did he have to discover who he was like everybody else does?
Right.
And if that's the case, then what a wild ride he had to go on.
Wow.
To not only figure out that I'm Jesus, the son of Mary, and
right.
got this Joseph guy who's my stepdad, but I'm the very Son of God, and the history. The whole world is riding on me succeeding. And one of the things I think was interesting is that after the resurrection on the road to Emmaus, Jesus was walking along with two guys, and they didn't know it was him. And it says he used the Old Testament to go through and tell them all the things that were going to happen to the Messiah. And so clearly, Jesus knew, based on his studies of the Old Testament, what the Messiah was going to go through. And so I speculate in the book that once that clicked, how much of a fervent hunger would you have to study the Old Testament if you knew it told your story and who you were going to be. Wow.
All right, before I take a break, let me ask you one other quick question. How did Jesus as a man deal with materialism?
I think in our culture that's a tough one, because for us to, even when we have so much, we feel like we don't have that much.
Right.
And I think I used to think that he used to deny himself and that this was more of a sacrificial kind of thing.
Right.
And but I think Jesus was about freedom. And the more I look at the way he lived his life, I really think he found more freedom in not having things. That, when I leave, like I said, I'm on vacation, so when I left, I had to make sure the water was shut off, and I had to make sure that the doors were locked, and I had to make sure that people, I have all these worries about back home that if I didn't have all that stuff, I wouldn't have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a level of freedom that comes in denying yourself of these things that I think a lot of times we see it as a sacrificial thing, and I think in Jesus' case, I think he saw it as a benefit.
Wow. All right, let me take a quick break right here. We're talking to Will Hathaway. He's the author of a couple of books, What If God Is Like This, and his latest book called The Human Side of Christ. And I even think there's book number 3 coming out. We'll talk to him about that in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, theDove.us.
Okay, we're back, and our guest today is Will Hathaway. He's the author of What If God Is Like This, and his latest book called The Human Side of Christ. And we're Skyping him in from his vacation. Actually, we're not Skyping him, we're talking to him from his vacation. And there's a picture of the book on the screen. Will, again, thank you for letting us interrupt time with your family. Didn't hope that's not too intrusive, but enjoying the conversation, because this book is very fascinating. And we're talking about the human side of Christ, and this basically came out of your argument of trying to defend Christ as God. Then you realize probably the best way to witness is to bring him back to the human side. Is that correct?
It is,
Good. All right. Did he ever? Well, we knew he was lonely. How did he handle it? How did he handle loneliness? We all deal with that.
You know, I think that he probably, you know, for the lonely people out there, and I'm sure there are people watching and listening right now that are affected by this, he probably knows that better than anybody. Because at a certain point in his life, he figured out he was very different, and I think he figured that out pretty early, even divinity aside. You know, we look at his mom, and we see that you know, that there was the virgin birth, and that Joseph married her to cover up the pregnancy, essentially, or to protect her from the effects of the pregnancy. And you know, in that day and age, that was almost a death sentence for a woman.
Right.
I mean, in some cases, it was. And so Jesus, as the child, the offspring of an illegitimate birth, would have been under immense scrutiny. And we look at the Bible, and I think we read it and assume that, okay, well, the birth was covered up, but Joseph married her, and so everything went smoothly. But one of the things that Jesus was in a debate with the Pharisees at one point, and one of the comments that they make is that they're not the sons of fornication, and the implication of that is that Jesus was. And I think that we have to be honest and say that if a young woman came out and said that her pregnancy was from God and a miracle when she was a virgin, I think that back then she probably would have been met with about the same level of skepticism as if a young lady did that today. And so as a result of that, Jesus, I think, would have been completely ostracized by a great number of people, including possibly even his own siblings, as they tried to distance himself from the one in the family who was of illegitimate birth. So, and then you mix into that the discovery of his divinity and who he is and the Son of God. And I think one of the things that Jesus turned to was God himself. As humans, I think we struggle a lot with self-worth, and we struggle a lot at times. Some of us do with am I worth anything? Am I valuable? And one of the great examples we have from Jesus is that everywhere you see him talking about God, he's always talking about how pleased God is with him, and how God loves him, and the Father's pleased with me, and he just fully embraced the idea that God loved him. And I know that I'm not very good at that, and I think we're not very good at that. And I think the first thing somebody could say is, well, he was perfect. Of course God would love him. But if Jesus knew he had to remain perfect for God to love him, then he would have known that that was conditional love, and God's love isn't conditional. So I think it's just being able to fully embrace that, as you look around at the beauty of this creation and this world, that the one who created it all considers you the pinnacle of this creation, and embracing that, I think, is a very powerful thing to help with loneliness and insecurity and feeling a lack of worth.
You know, it's so interesting. Other parts of his humanity obviously got hungry and thirsty. We all do that. As you mentioned earlier about loneliness and, of course, materialism. Did he ever struggle with lust?
You know, this might sound bad, but I hope he did. I think that is one of the most frustrating aspects of the entire Jesus story, is that for humanity, our sexuality is one of the biggest parts of our personal makeup.
Right.
And the Bible is pretty silent on how, the greatest example of how to be a human in the history of the world, how he handled it.
Right.
And I speculate that Jesus may have had just a different perspective on the opposite gender than most of us do. In that, I think that what we do see that's really interesting in the Bible is that he treated women so differently than their culture dictated them to be treated. Men would not speak to women in public. They wouldn't let them sit and talk. And we see him with letting women, stop serving him and come and sit at his feet and listen. We see him touching a woman with a hemorrhage, one of the most unclean possible things you could do in that culture. He took the time to touch her and give her a human connection. He spoke with the woman at the well. He treated them so differently than they would have ever been treated by any other man or any other person in their culture. And I think that's a real window into the fact that he saw something there that was very different than everybody else. And I would speculate that maybe the upbringing that he may have had, especially if it was out that Joseph was not his direct father, that he probably could have related to women more than most men in knowing what it felt like to be ostracized and put down and treated as a piece of property and things like that. And so I wonder in the book if maybe one of the things that maybe beyond the lust, he saw just the hurt that these women would have experienced in that culture, and maybe that was what would have overwhelmed him with compassion towards them.
Well, one thing he did.
But yeah, that's one that I would really like to. I wish the Bible spoke more on that one.
Well, but I think it does. It just doesn't in the way that it's hard for us at times to actually control. But it's pretty clear in some areas.
I mean, as far as him personally. I think.
Oh yeah, no question about it. And I'm sure you get that a lot, especially writing a book like this. And your comment on women. He showed them dignity, which the culture didn't, which was kind of interesting, Let me ask you this. I don't remember of any failures of Jesus. So could he handle failures, or did he ever experience that?
The closest, I didn't talk about this in the book, but the closest thing I could think of a failure would be, and I don't even know if I'd go so far as call it a failure, but when he went on that journey across the lake there, where he healed the man with the demons that was running among the tombs.
Right.
And he tried to reach out to the people there, but they were so scared of him, they asked him to leave. And so he did. But he left that man there as a testament to what he had done. And then the Bible indicates that later on he may have come back and that they may have accepted him then. But that would be another interesting one in that how would he handle failure? And the other thing is, I think we have such a warped perspective on what success and failure really is. I think, like for instance, trying to Skype in this morning, could get the Skype to work, that would be viewed in our culture as kind of a little bit of a failure.
Yeah.
But really, what is the main purpose? The main purpose is to communicate, to connect with people.
Right.
And so, I think he would have had such a profoundly different perspective on what failure really was. I think failure for Jesus was failure to be authentic and failure to be real, and hypocrisy and things like that. I think were things he would have considered to be a failure, rather than just not achieving something.
Yeah, fascinating. As you went through this experience, Will, and again, this is part of your study of apologetics, but as you went through this and you dealt with the human side of Christ, how has it impacted you in your ministry?
This has been one of the most, if I don't sell a single book, this was totally worth it. It has been one of the most fascinating spiritual journeys I've gone on in my life, in that, we were made in God's image, and we were made to be in God's image. And here we have the best example and the most documented example of a perfect human that we can find anywhere in history is Jesus of Nazareth. And with that, most of my life I was too busy looking at him as God than to look at the human part of him and recognize that there was something there that was immensely helpful in teaching me how to be human. We're the only creature on earth that has to learn how to be what we are. A dog knows how to be a dog, and a cat knows how to be a cat. But people have to learn how to be people. We're naturally kind of fake. We naturally hide things. We even wear clothes. We hide our own bodies. We hide our emotions. We hide all kinds of aspects of us. And one of the things that Jesus said is that to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become like a little child. And having small children, I find it interesting that little kids, they'll run around naked, and emotionally they'll be naked. They'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. They're just completely real.
Right.
And then we teach them to not be real. We teach them, all right, you need to put your clothes back on there and stop running around and stop being silly, and tell grandma her meatloaf tastes good even if it doesn't. And we start with good intentions, and we call it being polite, but essentially we're also teaching people to be fake. And we start to lose. I've never heard of a cow going on a 7-year backpack trip to find itself. They know what they are, and we're the only ones that don't. I find that really interesting as far as who we are.
No, that is a great point. Well, listen, before we run out of time, give us a sneak preview of your next book, When Dead Men Walk, The Return of Authentic Humanity. What are you doing here?
When Dead Men Walk is that's still about a year or so out, and that was basically going to look at it's going to further examine just our humanity. I looked at Jesus' humanity in this book. Now I'm going to look at our humanity. And as people, one of the things we tend to do as people is we look at being human as a limitation. I'm only human. It's human to fail. It's human to be flawed. It's human to make mistakes. But if you go back and look at the original being human was being in the image of God. And so to be human is a great honor. And I think that our problem is not that we're human, but that we're not human enough. We actually have lost our humanity. And so it's using Jesus as an example to try and regain that and to move on into better communion with God as a creature made in His image.
Well, Will, fascinating. Your insight is just very intriguing. Thank you so much. And again, his first book is What If God Is Like This? And the one we talked about today, The Human Side of Christ. And then in about a year or so, look for the next one coming out, When Dead Men Walk. But check it out at the Christian bookstores or online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And get a copy of it. I think you'll find it to be a fascinating read. Rulo, thank you again, and thank you for letting us interrupt your vacation. Blessings to you and your family, and keep up the good work, my friend.
You as well, my friend. Thank you, Perry.
See you later. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. Compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, my next guest is really one of those special people in ministry. His name is Michael Mower. He's with JAARS, which is the aviation branch of Wycliffe Bible Translators, and they've been doing work all over the world. And I think you'll find my time together with Michael to be pretty inspiring. Let's join that conversation. Well, today we're very honored to have with us a very special guest. Mike Mower is with us today, and his story and the reason he's here and where he's going and where he's been from is quite fascinating, as he is part of the Wycliffe Bible Translators, and he also flies with JAARS. And Mike, nice to have you in the studio.
Thank you, Perry. It's good to be here.
You're traveling through, right?
I am. I'm actually on a vacation trip this time with a couple of friends, kind of a dream trip. We all thought we could never do this. We left North Carolina and Georgia 2.5 weeks ago, and we've done some wilderness flying in Idaho and some flying here in Oregon and in Washington, and we're heading home after this interview.
Your bucket list flying trip, huh?
It is. It's been quite an experience.
But you've been involved with JAARS and Wycliffe, clear back to 81?
That's right.
How'd that happen? What got you going?
Oh, it's a long story, but in a nutshell, I was always interested in learning to fly. I grew up around naval air stations. My dad was an aircraft mechanic in the Navy. Saw airplanes all the time. When I got out of high school, I started taking flying lessons just because it's something I wanted to do. Shortly after I started taking lessons, a missionary pilot came through a church that I'd started attending. I never knew there was a such thing as missionary aviation. And he came through and spoke and shared some of his stories. And I thought, I didn't know you could do that. I could do that. Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
And so after that, I geared all of my aviation training, both pilot and mechanic training, towards going into missions. And in 1981, I had completed the minimum requirements for JAARS and applied, and became a member of Wycliffe Bible Translators, assigned to JAARS to use my aviation skills.
Wow! So you've been all over the world.
Well, not all over the world. I was assigned to the Philippines.
Really?
For 20 years. We
Wow.
lived in that country for about 15 and a half. My family went with us in support of Bible translation. And so most of my travel is to the Philippines. I've been to a lot of airports. I've been to the airport in Seoul and a couple of Japanese airports in Hong Kong and Taipei, but I just saw the airports.
Well, yeah. But, you know, tell us about JAARS, because it's been an incredible aviation ministry that's been around a long time and continues to go to all parts of the world.
The founder of Wycliffe Bible Translators, Cameron Townsend, early in the organization's history, saw a need for providing transportation support for the missionaries that he was sending out to do Bible translation. This we're talking about in the 1930s.
Wow.
And then World War II came along, and he saw his vision come to fruition in 1948 with the establishment of the Jungle Aviation and Radio Service to provide transportation and communication support for Bible translators in the Amazon jungles of South America. So that's how the organization started in 1948. Over the years, we've grown to provide many other resources in support of Bible translation. Actually, today, aviation is one of our smaller resources that we provide. IT is the biggest to provide for the Bible the IT needs in Bible translation. You know, so many other things that JAARS helps provide resources.
Just on that alone, Mike, I know that Wycliffe, I've heard some figures that reaching the entire world in all of the language is now in sight.
It is in sight. Today, the numbers of languages needing Bible translation is less than the numbers that either have a Bible, a New Testament, or in progress, where before we couldn't say that. We've seen the acceleration of Bible translation in the past 10 years has just been explosive to see the work of Bible translation and what God is doing to open doors and groups partnering together and working together to bring His Word to people around the world that don't have it. There's almost 7,000 languages spoken in the world. And when I joined the organization, probably 4,000 of them still had need of Bible translation.
Wow.
That didn't mean that the other 3,000 all had a full Bible, but at least they had something going.
Wow.
And today that number is down below 2,000 for the first time.
Yeah, and
history.
With you know, inventions being what they are and the IT age being what it is, and I understand they can take voice translate. I mean, this can accelerate real fast, can it?
It can, and the resources that JAARS helps provide to the Bible translation movement are a big part of that. Another thing is just the change in how we do Bible translation, the working with national churches and other organizations. Just a great partnership is growing to see that task completed. Wycliffe has a Vision 2025, was established in 1999, so they were looking 25 years ahead, and the vision was that by the year 2025, we'll see a Bible translation project begun in every language of the world that needs one. Not necessarily finished, but begun. And that seemed like an impossible task in 1999. We were looking at over 3,500 languages.
Wow.
And today, with the acceleration of Bible translation and what we're seeing, we say, you know, some of us said, well, we might make 2035 or 2050. It's looking like that 2025 is a goal that is very achievable. Yeah. And the vision that the Lord has given, and
it's possible the Lord gave you the right number at the right time.
That is right. That is right. That was adopted at an international conference, and
that's wonderful.
The delegates there met for hours in prayer, and that's what they came up with.
Boy, this is exciting.
It's an exciting time.
Now, you and your wife do a mission at the airport program.
Yes, I'm assigned now at the JAARS headquarters in North Carolina. My primary ministry is in public relations. I still get to fly, but I'm ahead of the missions at the airport program. It's an educational public relations outreach of JAARS kind of like a traveling missions conference that allows us to share the story of Bible translation and the needs, and challenge people to become involved with us, to pray for us, to give as they can with their resources, or come join us as volunteers or career missionaries, wherever they might fit. And that's in all aspects of life. You know, you could be a school teacher, an accountant, an aircraft mechanic, or a pilot, or a doctor, a nurse, you know, just so many areas. Anything that's done here in the U.S., even broadcasting, can be used in Bible translation.
So how do people just get a hold of Wycliffe and go from there?
Well, there's two ways. One is through the Wycliffe website. That's wycliffe.org, W-Y-C-L-I-F-F-E, wycliffe.org. The other is through the JAARS website. We're a family of organizations, so we're a part of that. And that's just JAARS.org, the JAARS website. You can go to that, learn more about the organizations, learn about how you could be involved, and contact us. There's ways to contact us.
Well, I just think, you know, you need to pray about that, because that 2025 now is in sight.
That's right.
You could be a part of an incredible time in world history, and quite frankly, the history of Christianity. And this organization has been around for a long, long time and doing a great work. You know, Mike, back to aviation for a moment. Okay. Kind of our little love together there.
Yes.
You have, JAARS has made a shift to turbine, right?
That's right. Over the years of JAARS aviation, there have been a wide variety of aircraft have been used. Some we used what we could get. We started, JAARS started with an old Grumman duck. Yeah, people have to Google that to find out what a Grumman duck is. Yeah. And just a wide variety of aircraft. But our primary workhorses have been Cessna 206s and Helio Couriers, airplanes that are good in the bush, but they're piston engine airplanes. They use aviation gasoline, and in many parts of the world today it's very difficult or very, very expensive to get aviation gasoline. So we have begun a transition of our fleet to a turbine fleet that uses jet fuel. Every country has airline service, so they have jet fuel available. It's usually cheaper, it's more available, and so we've adopted two aircraft that we're using primarily. The Quest Kodiak, built over in Sandpoint, Idaho.
Oh, I love that airplane. I've never been in one. I want to fly one.
That's right, and and that's replacing the Cessna 206s, and the Pilatus Porter, or PC-6, is replacing, built in Switzerland, is replacing our Helio Couriers. So we're going to that turbine fleet. Our pilots, especially the younger guys, you know, they're coming. Some of them are coming with turbine experience. We never used turbines before because they were so expensive to buy. Right. And now in an era where we're being forced to go to them, the Lord is providing the resources to purchase those aircraft.
Well, they are very efficient.
Yes.
And of course the fuel thing is a huge deal. Yes. But the performance that you're getting out of these, and I'm not too much familiar with the Pilatus 6, but the Kodiak, everything I read, and I've been on their site and I watch their videos and everything, I just go, this is the ultimate SUV with wings.
Well, that was an airplane that was developed with missions in mind.
Right, that was their heart, wasn't it?
The organizers who started that company came to us and other mission organizations and said, what do you need in the next generation of mission aircraft? So we all gave them our wish list. We got a lot of our wishes. We didn't get everything, but it was designed with missions in mind, and we appreciate that. The company has a heart for missions.
How big is your fleet now?
In the world of JAARS, 24 aircraft. We have 4 Quest Kodiaks and 4 PC-6s, and then other aircraft as well.
Well, I just want to encourage you, if you've never thought about this, you may want to think about it and pray about it, and take a look at JAARS.org, or Wycliffe.org, that's WYCLIFFE.org. And no matter where you are in life's journey, take a look, see what God's doing there, and see if you could want to become a part of it. And the least of which, visit those websites and support them if you so feel led, because what they do is strictly on a voluntary basis and nonprofit. I think talking to Mike, talking to me, we define that word, don't we? Nonprofit.
Yes. Nonprofit. That's right.
And anyway, and just in a closing thought, one of the most serving aircraft that you had is now homed here in Medford. Millie.
Millie. One of our aircraft that was in Peru for 27 years.
Wow.
Has been purchased by a friend here in Medford. Yeah. It's based in Medford, and we're hoping eventually to get some missions at the airport programs here in the Northwest, and using that airplane on static display to let people come out and learn some of its history and learn how it's been used.
Okay, wonderful.
Stories about how it's been used.
Well, Mike, safe travels, my friend. Enjoy your journey home. It's going to be a little warm as you go south.
That's right.
But stay high and enjoy yourself, and let's stay in touch.
We'll do that.
Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
Well, fascinating discussion with JAARS, the aviation arm of Wycliffe. Well, coming up next, as you know, the Obama mandate for companies was delayed a year. What does all that mean? I don't know. It's kind of confusing. A couple thousand pages for us to figure out. Well, our next guest can give us a handle on it, and we'll talk to him coming up next. James Lansberry is with us.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. Our next guest is James Lansberry. He's president of the Alliance of Health Caring Sharing Ministries. He's also vice president of Peoria-based Samaritan's Ministry International, and perhaps you've read some of his articles in the Heritage Forum, the Journal of the Modern Ministry, and has been interviewed by CBS and a lot of the other large media, but now he's made it because he's on the Dove. So, James, nice to have you with us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you bet. Well, fascinating times in which we live with as it relates to healthcare. But before we get into that, tell us about Alliance of Healthcare Sharing Ministries. What is it?
Well, sure. Healthcare Sharing Ministries are non-insurance ministries that coordinate families sharing one another's medical burdens without using insurance. And so we have over 100,000 families, over 100,000 people nationwide who are taking part in ministries like this. The main ministries that are part of the Alliance of Healthcare Sharing Ministries. And so it's a trade organization that helps these small nonprofit ministries gain some footing in the public policy realm.
Wow. And how's it going?
Things have been going very well. We're very excited about this. We were able to, by sheer grace of God, see an exemption language for the individual mandate get put into the Affordable Care Act, and we're very thankful for that. So our members will be able to continue with these non-insurance charitable options even after the individual mandate kicks in next year without penalty.
All right. Well, it seems, James, that the ObamaCare has fallen apart. I mean, what's your thoughts on what's happening?
Well, the main thoughts are that it's very obvious that despite the rhetoric that's been coming from the administration, that not everything is going as smoothly as they have led us to believe up to this point. And that's, for most of the insiders, that's not terribly surprising, but the rhetoric has been consistently, no, we have all our I's dotted and our T's crossed, everything is on schedule. But this delay marks something amazingly large. The employer mandate is one of the three largest factors in the Affordable Care Act. And delaying that for a year is signaling that there's trouble that is under the surface of the implementation of this. Now, certainly the delay of the employer mandate is going to make the implementation simpler, but it's going to make it much more expensive. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a big deal. And there's also arguable that the administration really doesn't have the legal authority to delay this. Congress has passed a law that says that both the reporting requirements and the mandate go into effect starting in January 1st. For them to delay it a year, they lack the authority for that. Whether or not there's going to be any complaints about that, I don't know whether there's any real standing for anyone to challenge that in court. But the issue is that the law's very clear on this, and hopefully there'll be some at least bipartisan effort to give them legal authority to delay that, maybe by even eliminating the mandate altogether.
Well, by delaying the mandate, this is the employer mandate provision there in the ObamaCare, by delaying it until 2015, whether it was the cost or the technicality, it could have been political. I mean, all of those together, you know, probably created the mess.
Yeah, there's certainly some political end to this. Hearing stories of senators from Ohio who wanted to readjust the employer mandate penalties, at least how they were measuring full-time employees, because they were hearing from constituents that people were going to be getting their hours cut back to under 30 hours a week because that was the definition of full-time under the Affordable Care Act. And so the unintended consequences of a mandate like this are that employers are going to make decisions based on what's going to be best in the best interest of their company continuing to make a profit so they can continue operating. And so this mandate had some unintended consequences that will affect employment law, and that was really a big deal for a lot of congressmen and senators who really didn't want to see that happen to their constituents.
Not to mention an election year.
Right. And that does make a big difference.
Yeah.
I think that this is a nice opening, though, for those of us who'd like to see the Affordable Care Act either go away or some of the effects of it be mitigated in the industry. I think that this is a chance to see, hopefully, the employer mandate not just get delayed, but hopefully get completely repealed. I think that would certainly make the law a little smoother for most people. It would make it less of a job killer.
Yeah.
And so the effect on the economy would be much smaller. And it'd make things much simpler. If you have an employer mandate or an individual mandate, those two things are clean. When you have these crossed signals where employers have to cover insurance and individuals have to carry it, it makes things at least twice as complicated, if not 4 times as much.
All right. It just seems to be an oxymoron to call it Affordable Care Act when it's anything but. And quite frankly, and I want to be respectful here, but it appears at this moment, James, that everything that the president said about the Affordable Care Act is not true, especially how much it costs.
Well, the cost is certainly going to be variable, and there's never, ever been a long-term program that Congress has designed that has come in underneath its original CBO estimate.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. And so to say that something is deficit neutral when it's passed, that tends to be an accounting gimmick. And in every case, not just the case of the Affordable Care Act. And that's something that Congress does in order to make sure things seem more palatable to the American people. But this bill is going to be extremely expensive. The delay of the employer mandate is only going to make it more expensive because not only are they going to lose the estimated $10 billion in penalties that they would have received for the first year from employers that weren't complying, but it's going to be much more difficult to gauge those premium assistance credits and who is going to be eligible for that based on whether or not they were offered a plan through their employer. And because of that, the amount of budget that's going to be taken up for those subsidies for individuals seeking plans in the exchange is going to be larger than it would have, which is going to blow the cost estimates out of the water for that as well.
So at the bottom line, how does this affect small business and maybe even small ministries?
Well, for small business and small ministries, it's only positive. If you don't have insurance for your employees right now, you're not going to be penalized for that in the coming days. You don't have to adjust anything. You've got at least a year to make an adjustment and figure out what you want to do with that, and whether you use that year to bank the savings so that you can afford the penalty in the future, whether you use it to call your congressman and ask for the whole repeal of the employer mandate. Those are options that are in front of you. It also gives you another opportunity to pursue something like a healthcare sharing ministry for your staff. And that's where you continue to make Samaritan Ministries available to small organizations, small ministries who are employing only Christians who want to have a faith-based, something consistent with their religious beliefs, healthcare option that is both affordable and cost effective and it meets with all of their religious convictions. So that's really something that we want to see people look into. And this year of delay will give you some margin to be able to make that decision a little more carefully. We hope that the employer mandate is going to go away completely. We think that it's a really bad option for American jobs and for American corporations, big and small. And it just makes very little sense that even liberals, commentators like Ezra Klein have agreed it's very poorly designed to accomplish its goal. And if it just went away, it would be better for the Affordable Care Act. It would be better for the American people. And that's something I think liberals, conservatives, and libertarians can all agree on. And so that's really what we'd like to see over the next 12 months is a bipartisan effort to repeal the employer mandate completely so that we can then focus on the other issues that are going on, healthcare.
So on the healthcare sharing side of things that you're involved in, so you're encouraging employers and employees, or just employers to put money into a pool for their employees?
Well, I think employers can make a lot of different decisions right now. I think with what healthcare costs are looking like, if you're in that 50 to 100 range, you may be better off just planning to pay the penalty when it actually takes effect and letting your employees make the best healthcare decisions for themselves, whether it be at the exchange or whether it be for something like a healthcare sharing ministry. And that's what I would encourage someone in that 40 to 100 range to be really seriously consider, because it's an affected and balanceable cost. That penalty is going to be plannable for, and your employees are going to be out there seeking an option that they're happy with, as opposed to you trying to play the benefits game. I think in the new day and age that healthcare benefits are going to be less of an issue for people who are trying to recruit new employees because of the exchanges, because of the subsidized plans that are going on there, because people are going to be looking for more of a portable healthcare option, which the exchange provides and employers don't. And so I think that's going to be less of an issue. You're better off paying your employees more and letting them make their healthcare decisions. And that's really a model that's better off for your staff from the get-go. The employer-centric system we have now is a big part of the problem in healthcare.
Right. Where is the HHS mandate now? Where is that sitting over the top of nonprofit organizations?
Well, that's still sitting there, and that's another reason why employers may want to just gut it out and pay the penalty when it comes effect, rather than sign up for an insurance policy that's going to cover things that they disagree with. Right now, that HHS mandate for all organizations, that for $100 a day penalty per employee, that you have to cover birth control, you have to cover the abortion pill, all of those mandated benefits are taking effect now. And the government has released its final rule, and there is no religious freedom exemption for organizations, whether you're private or public. And that's a really sad thing to see, that we've trumped on religious freedom that way. So even a Roman Catholic hospital is going to have to provide birth control, which they find antithetical to their mission statement, to all their employees. And so for a Christian organization looking at that, that's an additional reason to choose something like Healthcare Sharing Ministries, pay the penalty if it takes effect. And you can find out more about healthcare sharing at SamaritanMinistries.org. And we'd love to talk to you about how you can craft a plan for your staff, or to help your staff find better options that are consistent with their own religious beliefs. Okay, again, that's healthcareshareministries.org. Check it out. James, do you think it's possible, the Affordable Care Act / ObamaCare seems to be so upside down, and the approval rating continue to fall? Do you think it's possible they just defund it? I mean, I know it's a law, but how could they nullify it? They just defund it? What would they do? Well, yeah, it'd be very difficult to defund, because it has been passed and there is some administrative leeway to be able to spend appropriations, and that's going to be very difficult for them to do. There's several case laws that are still in place. Oklahoma has filed suit against the particular issue related to whether subsidies are available in federally based exchanges as opposed to state-based exchanges. That suit's probably going to take a couple of years to work itself out in the courts. And so they're still up in the air whether or not the IRS ruling that subsidies would be available in both exchanges, despite the law seeming to read the entire opposite. So there's several implementation issues that are still being litigated right now. And so that's a big deal. I think for the administration and for Congress right now, one of the best face-saving things they could do is look for a bipartisan way to clean up the bill, including a repeal of the employer mandate. That's something both sides of the aisle can agree on right now, and then see what happens as the chips fall out from that. Well, fascinating and troubling at the same time. Again, it's healthcareshareministries.org. Check it out, and there might be some great resources there for you to consider. Thank you, James, for what you guys do. Let's stay in touch on this. Let's see if the can gets kicked down the road maybe another year, huh? Yep, it's certainly possible. Well, thanks for having me today. And again, you can find us at SamaritanMinistries.org. Have a great day. All right, God bless you. Okay, SamaritansMinistry.org. All right, blessings to you. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at the Dove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.